You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, certified life coach, pain to power mentor, and creator of Embody You Mindset Mastery School. I'm here today to discuss living life after disease, disaster, or adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to the life of your dreams, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Live Free podcast. Today I want to talk about expectations and how they lead to pain in life. So there's a lot of different ways that we can create pain in our life, but number one is expectation. If you expect things to happen in your life, you will inherently cause yourself pain. And so most people say, well, isn't that the law of attraction? Isn't that the way that we bring in the things that we want in our life by expecting them? Well, sort of. So expectation is a form of control. So if you expect for you to have perfect health, for example, and you don't get perfect health, then you will inevitably feel pain. Whereas if you expect instead to have whatever is necessary in order for you to have perfect health, then you will feel elation. What it really comes down to is that yes, you should expect good things, but it is in the controlling of the exact outcome that we create pain in our lives. So to further that, let's talk about the labels of good and bad. So we expect good things, or we expect bad things, and therefore we get good or bad things. But these labels themselves are the source of pain in life. So we make a decision. You want to live a healthy life, and then something like cancer shows up. And you say to yourself, well, this is not what I expected. This is bad. I had a good life and now I have a bad life. And yes, don't get me wrong, the process is not a nice process. I've been there and I get it. However, it's happening to you whether you do or do not want it. So when you label this experience in life as bad, and that could be attributed to anything. That could be your children. That could be, whether or not they're being good or bad. It could be your financial situation, whether or not it's good or bad. Whatever situation it is, understand that when you are labeling things as good or bad, you are putting on a label that is within your context of reality that is going to determine whether or not that experience does or does not serve you. So let's bring it back to cancer. If you say that cancer is bad and you expected good health and now you do not have good health and you're upset, you will go through that process in so much pain all the way through. And so you have another expectation. You expect that your next CT scan will be clear. And then it isn't. And so you say this is bad. And then you expect that, your surgery will go well and there won't be any rogue cancer cells, and maybe that's not true. So that you label it as bad. You expected it to go well and it was bad. And all of those things, yes, it's not great. Don't get me wrong, I understand. And I'm not saying to label it as good, that would be polarizing. But instead to hands off, kind of a Jesus takes the wheel sort of situation. Consider, instead of labeling it as bad and having an expectation of something good, but then getting something bad, consider just saying it is what it is and allowing that to be so, because we don't know what the universe has in store for us. We don't know what this world is set up for. We don't know what will or will not serve us. And yes, cancer, for example, is a very strongly scary situation. This would be a lot easier if I was comparing it to, say, money or your children or your job. Yes, it would be, but this is the name of the game. The big things that happen in our lives, the scary big things, we have an opportunity in those times to choose a different path. Instead of being toxic positivity and saying everything's good, or being toxic negativity and saying everything's bad, I'm inviting you to look at life from a different lens of saying, good, bad, who knows? I don't know what this situation is for me. I don't know what silver lining there is here. I don't know what I can learn in a positive way here. I don't know how I can make my life better or worse as a result of everything that's happening. You just don't know, right? And so I chose, in my experience with cancer, to say that I don't like this and I'm not having fun, and this isn't inherently good, but I know that there are lessons here for me, that there's something that I'm meant to learn, be, do, or have. And when I went through that process, I found that it wasn't as painful. So many people said to me, are you feeling it? Are you sure? Because you don't seem that upset and cancer's pretty bad. And I kept saying, yeah, I know it's bad. And I feel really crappy a lot of the time, and I'm allowing myself to feel it. But what it really comes down to is that I believe there is something good for me in this, and I don't know why, but I just do. And in that process of believing that there was something in there for me, good, bad, who knows? I don't know what this experience is, but I know that there's an experience here and that there's nothing I can do about it other than to allow it to fill me up, other than to allow it to give me something, whatever it is, to serve me in some way. And therefore, it wasn't as painful. So I'm not minimizing the fact that you have gone through hell if you're a survivor listening to this, because I have all kinds of listeners. And so I'm not minimizing the fact that you may have gone through hell. I understand that it's not a nice experience, but it's happening to you anyway. And so I invite you to allow yourself a sense of peace, happiness, pleasure at times. Because what it really comes down to is that good things lead to happiness and enjoyment. Bad things lead to rapid growth if you let them. That's the caveat here, is that you have to let them lead to rapid growth, which will lead you to more peace and joy. But if you label something as bad, and you are so sure that it is bad, and you continually perpetuate this victimization that says it's bad, then the paradox here is that what you will get is more bad, more pain, So it is in the labeling of this experience that determines the way that you feel it. And labeling things as good or bad is a sense of control. Within your context of reality, you have decided something is good or bad. But as I talk about in a previous podcast called Good, Bad, Who Knows? And I love that episode, and I really, really recommend it if you have a chance to listen to that one. What I love about that, about that episode is it talks about a farmer who, and I can't remember the whole story, but it talks about a farmer who his son loses the sheep or the cattle. And he says, good, bad, who knows? And in the process of that, something happens where he ends up with a bunch of money. So everyone says, oh, that's so great. And then he loses all his money. And everyone goes, oh, that's so bad. But in the process of losing all of his money, his family was restored. And I guess what I'm trying to say with this very rudimentary version of the story is that what it comes right down to is that we don't know what these outcomes are. But when you try to control your environment by labeling it as good or bad based on your context box of reality, then you are creating the world in which you live in. Whereas to someone else, that painful thing might be the biggest blessing. And they'll have a completely different experience than you will if you have labeled something as bad. So controlling your environment in an effort to avoid pain is paradoxically causing you all of the pain that you're feeling right now. So intending to control that environment is truly what is causing you the pain. The environment cannot be controlled. The more you feel the pain, the more the pain comes in. The more that you say that something is good, the more the happiness will come. So choose wisely. Choose what sounds right to you. I'm not saying not to feel. There's an opportunity for that. It's important to feel pain when something is bothering you, when your expectation has been dropped. When you had a playwright for the universe and you asked the universe to give you a certain set of lines and the universe didn't follow those lines. I get it. There's a time and a place where you need to feel some pain there. Because we're not perfect. It would be so great if none of us ever had an expectation. I get that. It would be so great. But the fact of the matter is that we do. We're humans. But we can remind ourselves in those times where the expectation was dropped. Whether that be in your relationship, your health, your money. You had a certain way in which that you expected your husband or wife to do something and they didn't. You can understand that you're upset only because of the expectation that you put on your partner. That you said that you wanted them to read those lines in that play that you wrote for them. And then they read different lines. And so now you're upset. I get that feeling. I mean, we've all been there. But in that experience, that is where we generally are causing ourselves, by ourselves, pain. Because something that husband or wife may have said could have been exactly what you needed to hear, or in a different way that you guys could connect, or a different way that you could make your lives better somehow. But because they didn't follow through, you just shut it off. You said, no, I'm not interested. But if you open your eyes to the experience that is in front of you, if you allow the experience that is in front of you in the present moment to be what it is, you can learn so much in this life. You can grow so much as a person. But that is your decision to let that in or to cut it off. And this takes practice. I get it. Over time, it will get easier. I really like the saying, good, bad, who knows? And it's one that I use quite a bit. Because, I have been through hell, just like you have been through hell. And it does suck sometimes. There are certainly times, especially when I'm feeling hungry or angry or lonely or tired, that I have a hard time dropping my expectations of how I wanted my life to be. I mean, who doesn't want to have more money, more success, a slimmer body, to not have cancer? All of those things I have wanted at times and felt like, well, why me? Why don't I have those things and somebody else does? I know that feeling. But what did that do for me in that moment? It caused me pain. Whereas I could accept that in that moment, I could have accepted that I had the health that I do have, accepted that I have the body that I do have. I'm not talking about not being accepted, being like rolling over and never doing anything. That's not what I mean by accepted. Acceptance is not surrendering and not being interested in making positive change. That's not what acceptance means. Acceptance means understanding where you are, being appreciative of the present moment, and working towards where you want to be. Because if you are in expectation, you are in the past or in the future. So you expected your past to go a certain way. When you think of your past, you're in pain. Or you expected your future to be a certain way, or you are expecting your future to be a certain way and you don't know how to get there. When you are in those two places, you are in pain. Expectation of this current moment will also cause you pain, but generally speaking, if you're in the current moment, you aren't in expectation. So instead, coming back to this present moment, when you're in this present moment in time, expect nothing. Instead, allow the moment to be what it is, in whatever capacity it needs to be. And allow that to be exactly as it needs to be. Good, bad, who knows? I hope this was helpful today, and I hope that you have a beautiful day. All my love.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found expansion with this last episode, then that means that others will too. And the best way to get the word out about the podcast is by leaving a review. I would be so grateful if you could leave me a review and let me know how you felt about the podcast. Included in the show notes will be everything that we talked about today, including all of my transformative programs. Change is just on the horizon, my friend.